Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to entitled people, where people truly believe the world revolves around them and nobody matters. And in this episode, Opie tells a tale about the time his mother lets his spoiled brother destroy a birthday party because it wasn't all about him. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories today. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can share or link your post to this email right here. So my neighbor is an idiot, and we've been having issues with her from the start. Living next to her, we would hear relentless dog barking 4 days a week for years. On top of that, she would claim I was stealing from her, dead rabbits were placed on my doorstep, the usual property line arguments, she would empty her hot tub onto our property, spy on us, have loud parties, loud noises, etc. Eventually we built a giant fence, and it's kept the bull crap to a minimum. Both yards have plenty of mature trees. We have 3 maples over 150 years old, a nearly 100-year-old birch, a 12-foot cedar hedge, add that to the giant fence, and daylight's a minimum in our backyard in the summer. My idiot neighbor has 2 century-old trees and a very mature mulberry tree that hung over the fence in the only area that enjoys direct sunlight. Now this part is entirely our fault. One spring, we built a patio there with light gray stone. The mulberry tree has dark purple fruit, and hers is extremely prolific. The week construction finished was the week the berries ripened and began to drop in the slightest breeze. Sitting out there for any length of time, and you would be pelted with berries, leaving purple stains like you were shot with a paintball gun. Sweeping a path was the only way to not step on them. If this only lasted for a few weeks, it would be tolerable, but mulberries are in season all summer. The amount of birds that feasted on the fruits and promptly deposited bright purple bird crap on everything we owned outside was unbelievable. Purple bird droppings dried everywhere, on the patio and beyond. We started putting tarps all over the entire patio to collect the bird dung-coated berries, and emptied them into a bucket every time we wanted to use the patio. Now, remembering our Karen neighbors were known for eavesdropping, I began to talk about mulberry wine, saying how good my mulberry wine was and how this year's bumper crop of mulberries was gonna make so much wine and how we're gonna go on a vacation with all the money I was making. I would talk about it for weeks, even got visitors joining in on the act, claiming they could not wait for their allotment of my famous mulberry wine, and even offering bribes to be moved up the list. Now, to make things clear, I do not make mulberry wine. I never have, and I wouldn't start with mulberry bird poop wine. With that, one rainy early summer night, I heard and felt a tremendous crash. I run into the backyard, and the largest limb from the mulberry tree was lying in my backyard. A chainsaw was sputtering on the other side of my giant fence. The mulberry tree was coming down at night in a rainstorm, which is more evidence of her idiocy. There was a bit of yelling back and forth through the fence, me about her being a dangerous moron, and her screaming at me about having a nice vacation without having mulberry wine to sell. The woman continued to cut down the whole tree, instead of just the limbs hanging on our property, screaming that the dumb witch beside her doesn't deserve to profit off her fruit. I just laughed myself into the house, not quite believing my ruse worked so well, and revenge was finally mine, but that poor tree died needlessly. Barely a month later, a viscous storm blew through our area, splitting one of her mature trees in half and damaging the other so badly it needed to be removed. Now that idiot has no trees, but mine are all still standing. Yeah, so I just want to throw it out there that the neighbor wasn't only entitled, guys, she sounded a little bit nuts. And I do feel bad for the tree getting cut down, but guys, this is a great example of working smarter, not harder. And this person comments, now when you're outside, have loud conversations about how the mulberry wine market just cratered out. And thank God that tree went down before you financed this year's operation. How in hindsight, that tree coming down saved you from financial ruin. Wouldn't that be something? And the neighbor would lose her business. Brilliant. So for the last dozen years or so, I've been carrying this gorgeous vintage designer bag that I found online. I think I bought it in 2010. I love it and I'll carry it until it falls apart, and I get a ton of compliments on it. And this also caused this one crazy story. So I spent 3 years working in an Ivy League college town upscale clothing boutique that catered to wealthy college students and their parents and tourists. We didn't sell anything like this bag, but I suppose I can see where it would have fit in with the things we did sell. One afternoon, I was getting ready to leave for my lunch break, and I had put my vintage bag on the counter while I was putting my coat on. That's when an expensively dressed woman who had just walked up to the counter picked up my bag. She asked my coworker who was at the register how much it was. That's when I walked over and politely took it from her. I said it's my personal bag and it wasn't for sale. The woman literally snatches it out of my hands and she goes off on both of us. How the bag was sitting on the counter and it had to be for sale. The woman was saying how it's obviously a much too fancy and expensive bag for a retail loser to own. And oh, didn't we just wish we were Ivy League students like her precious babies? Which was actually funny because I didn't work there because I needed money. I worked there as a favor to the owner, who was a friend of the family, basically as a fill-in for one of her full-time employees who had a chronic illness and called in sick a lot. This entitled woman probably really would have flipped if I told her that my husband was a professor at our beloved Ivy League school, and that I could easily afford that bag, thank you very much. So anyways, the woman just kept screaming at us that she wanted that bag so badly. She absolutely refused to believe it belonged to me because, again, I looked way too poor to afford a bag like this. She then starts screaming about wanting to see the manager or the owner. And she didn't believe my coworker when she told the woman that she was the store manager. We finally told her if she didn't give me back my bag and leave the store, that we were gonna call the police. The woman refused, so the police were called. So the police get there and Karen gets even worse. She doubles down on her particular form of insanity. She tells them that it's her bag and that she'd brought it in with her and that we were trying to steal it from her. Because, quote, look at them. Do they look like they can afford a bag like this? And that we should be arrested. That's when the cop took the bag away from her, opened it up, and emptied all the contents on the counter. Inside the bag was my cell phone, which of course I knew the passcode to and she didn't. My prescription medication bottles in my name, my checkbook, and everything else I carried on a daily basis. How she had failed to recognize, just from the weight of the bag, that it had stuff in it, I don't know. You could see the fear creeping on her face as the cop came up with one item after another that proved the bag was mine. When he got to my wallet and pulled out what was clearly my license, the woman just pulls away from the second cop, who was holding onto her arm, and pretty much runs out of the store. I kind of wish they had gone after her, but apparently they didn't think the situation warranted it, because they just asked us if we considered it worth pursuing her and pressing charges. Sadly, in that moment, we didn't want to be bothered. We just wanted it to be over with so we could go on with our day. I wish now that we had. She needed to be taught a lesson or forced to get mental help. She wasn't the only crazy entitled customer we ever got, but she was one of the most memorable. Wow guys, people that double down never cease to amaze me. And like Obi said, how that woman failed to realize that there was stuff in the bag is beyond me. Like, I wish I could have seen her face when Opie's phone and ID were in that bag. And for all of you who are curious, here's what the bag looks like. So this happened a long time ago, when my brother was around 6 or 7 years old. A neighbor boy down the street was having a birthday party, and my brother got invited because they were sort of friends. Now, a thing to know is my parents treated my brother like the golden child because he was the youngest, and he was extra coddled by my parents for having been diagnosed with high-functioning autism when he was 4. But other than that, he seems very normal, just unbelievably spoiled, like he could do no wrong. And as a result of that, my brother felt like he could do anything. So with that said, my parents dragged me along to this party, even though I'd rather stayed home and played video games. I was bored and sitting down almost the entire time, so I got to witness pretty much the whole situation. It all started when my brother was caught picking up gifts off the table and shaking them. The mother of the birthday boy told him to stop, and that's when my parents tried to defend my brother and say that he was harmless. The lady knew what my brother was really like and had my parents move him away from the presents. There were some games that the kids were playing, and I don't remember what they were, but I do remember that my brother tried to be the center of attention as much as possible. With each game, the birthday boy got first pick / turn on them because it was his birthday. That's when my brother freaks out because he never got to be first. My parents at one point even demanded the birthday boy's mother let my brother get the first pick / turn. The lady not only refused, but told my parents to get my brother under control, or we'd all be asked to leave. Then came time for the cake. The mother lit the candles for the birthday boy, and the adults started singing the happy birthday song. They only got as far as singing the birthday boy's name in the song before my brother burst into a tantrum at the table. He then grabs the side of the table and starts trying to violently shake it. My parents had to hold my brother back for a moment. And then I saw my mother go up and talk to the mom of the birthday boy about something, and the poor lady looked positively disgusted. I learned later that she had asked her to let my brother blow out the candles first, and then they could redo it for the birthday boy. That's when the lady told my mom that it would be best if we just left, and they went back to singing happy birthday and trying to redo the birthday song. Well, as soon as my brother was told he had to leave, he couldn't take it. He ran to the table and he shoved the whole cake right at the birthday boy. I mean, he used his arm to clothesline the cake and heave it right into that poor kid's face. The whole room was silent for a few seconds. A bunch of kids started laughing and the birthday boy starts crying. The adults were all mortified, except for my parents. My mom just starts hugging my brother tightly and acting like a Karen by saying this could have all been prevented if they had just let my brother blow out the candles first. The mother of the birthday boy screamed at my parents to get out. The other kids start crying because it had finally hit them that now there was no cake. My mom starts dragging my brother out, but as he was kicking and flailing, he just pushed over the table with all the presents on it. I apologized profusely to the mother of the birthday boy and said I wasn't on my parents' side in that matter. And yeah, that's right. Little 12-year-old me had to apologize for my own parents. My dad then yelled at me to get moving or I could walk home. I said I would walk home. It was literally a quarter mile down the street. I stayed and helped clean up the mess that my brother made. The lady thanked me and said that I was a good egg. Someone went out and got another cake while the birthday boy had to take a shower because he was covered in cake. All the mess was cleaned up and they redid the birthday song. A day later, we got a letter from the parents. It was a handwritten invoice to my parents for the destroyed cake, along with a written threat to call police as someone there with a camera caught everything. When I handed the invoice to my parents, they really didn't look happy when they read it. My parents gave me the cash and told me to take it back to the lady, so I did, and that was pretty much it. Neither that kid or his family ever associated with my brother or parents again. But the messed up thing is, at another birthday party months later, the same situation nearly repeated itself entirely. My mother asked the parents to let my brother blow out the candles first, and gave a BS excuse as to why. And they outright refused, and my mother acted like a total Karen. My brother once again tried to knock down the cake, and I was on guard and intercepted him. Then we were told to leave. And on my next birthday that same year when I turned 13, my parents tried to get me to let my brother blow out my candles. And that's when my aunt tore into them for that. It was then, I guess, that my parents decided that if I couldn't share, then next year I should not have a party at all. Guys, that is so wild, how the parents just let their son do what he wants, to the point that he destroys whole birthday parties, because it wasn't all about him. And the fact that the parents are enabling it and didn't learn from that one incident makes it so much worse. And this person says, as someone who's been around children who happen to be autistic, I understand that they don't always understand that not everything is for them, but it's up to the parents to work with them on their social skills. What's overlooked as, oh, that poor thing doesn't know any better in a 6-year-old is a potential felony in an adult, which leads to this comment. This person says, as a mother of an autistic child who's now a grown adult, I know how they can be. But in this case, your parents are just enabling the behavior. My son was taught that if it's not his birthday, it's not his cake and not his gifts. What this did was teach him that what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. There's no shades of gray. He once threatened his brother with calling the police because the 11-year-old had picked up his Game Boy and started playing. He claimed my other son was stealing from him. The autistic child was 21 at that point. So yeah, there's a lot of comments saying that there's never an excuse for not parenting a child. And for those who are thinking that with all the enabling, it's only gonna get worse, here's the story about OP's 14th birthday with his brother. I'm 20 years old, and this happened when I was 14. I have a brother that's about 6 years younger than me. For all who haven't read my post, he's extra coddled by my parents for having been diagnosed with high-functioning autism. He's very normal, just unbelievably spoiled. He's used to getting his way a lot, and by a lot, I mean nearly all the time. Anything I had, he also had to have. So that meant that we had doubles of almost everything that wasn't shared items. And anything I had that he didn't, he would rub in my face any way he could. When I was 11, I begged my parents for a Nintendo 3DS for my 12th birthday. I got one, but I was told to give it to my brother whenever he wanted it, or else I'd have it taken away, which of course was a lot. When my aunt found out after seeing my parents forcibly take my 3DS out of my hands to give to my brother, she let loose on them for such blatant favoritism. They returned it immediately, then blamed me for the situation after my aunt left. They didn't make me give it to my brother again. Instead, my parents went out a few days later and bought another 3DS as a surprise gift for my brother. On several of mine and other people's birthdays, my brother made a huge fuss because the party wasn't all about him, even going so far as to outright state that he was upset that he wasn't getting any gifts or getting to blow the candles out on the cake. Because of that, kids at the school stopped inviting him to birthday parties altogether. For me, my birthdays were some of the only days I had that I got to have all about me because otherwise, my parents forced my life to revolve around my little brother. The year prior to when this story took place, my parents ended up paying more attention to him the entire time of my 13th birthday. They even asked me if I would let my brother blow out my candles for me because he was upset and pouting. Of course, I refused because I wanted to blow out my own candles. They called me a spoiled brat at first, until my aunt intervened and chastised them on their favoritism yet again. She stated how much she noticed that my brother gets nearly everything between the two of us just because he's autistic. My parents got no support from anyone else there other than my brother, who was still crying because he wasn't getting to blow out my candles. And because he didn't get his way, he tried to spit on my cake out of spite. But my awesome aunt thankfully blocked him before he got the chance, and then scolded him until he ran to my mom in tears. My parents took a lot of heat from the other adults there, and then promised to never ask me to let my brother blow out my candles again. The following year, a couple of weeks before my birthday, my parents just sat me down, and they told me that they were still gonna get me gifts and a small cake, but that my birthday party was effectively cancelled, to avoid my brother having another meltdown. I told them I couldn't believe they were doing this to me, and they just seemed to shrug it off, without a care. So at school the next week, I told my friends, my teachers, and even my school counselor, and all of them were appalled by my parents' lack of consideration or empathy. The vice principal even found out and consoled me, and all of this got back to my parents through social media. My parents ended up grounding and gaslighting me for telling so many people. But that didn't stop me from telling everyone at school that I was grounded for just being upset that my birthday was cancelled for no good reason. Now I guess that made it a lot worse because several of my parents' own friends, along with parents to other kids in my school, called them up or sent them Facebook messages saying, "What the hell is wrong with you?" Suddenly, I was ungrounded. I didn't get an apology either. My dad just walked into the room with his arms crossed, told me my grounding was over early, and then walked out. That was it. I thought my party was still cancelled because no one said anything about it. My brother thought it was hilarious, and he rubbed it in my face that I wasn't gonna get to celebrate. But by the end of the 2 weeks, my parents had held a surprise party for me at my favorite restaurant, and then started claiming that that was their intent all along. But I knew it wasn't. From what I could see, everyone was incredibly unhappy with them for what they did, so they ended up doing the surprise party to try to save what little of their reputations they had left. But I'm pretty sure they had to pay through the nose that day just to accommodate me. I got dinner with all my friends at my favorite restaurant that had a small arcade. I even got the PlayStation system that I'd been jonesing for at the time. I could tell it was pretty much planned and bought last minute because my dad had a look about him that my aunt comically described as looking like a moth had flown out of his wallet. My brother, of course, made a huge fuss that I even got a surprise party. But with all of my friends and their parents there, my mom and dad finally put their foot down on my brother to stop his tantrum when he tried to push my cake off the table. My brother ended up getting a timeout for the first time since he was a toddler, and my mom had to stay with him to make sure he didn't do anything crazy. He did try several times to run to the cake or the stack of presents to knock it over, and who knows what he would have done were it not for the fact that at least one adult was always on guard. My mom ended up having to remove my brother and herself from the party entirely, and took my brother to a McDonald's nearby so he could have fun in their play area. but I heard later that she spent at least an hour trying to get him to come out of the play place structure. My parents never tried to cancel my birthday again while I lived with them, though they never tried as hard or spent as much. For the remaining 4 years I was under their roof, my birthday parties consisted of a pizza parlor, cake without even my name written on it, and never again anything as expensive as a new gaming system. I don't mean to sound spoiled, but I was a bit disappointed that I never got a cake with my name on it ever again. My aunt called my parents out on that each year, and each year they claimed they forgot to get the cake decorated. I'm pretty sure that the reason my name was never written on another cake again was because my brother always refused to eat pieces of cake that had writing of someone else's name on it. During each of my remaining birthday parties, my brother always made a fuss, and my mom just took him somewhere else to calm him down. I was still required to share my PlayStation 4 with my brother, but it was still mine, and I took it with me when I moved out at 18 years old. My little brother did not like that, and he had a huge tantrum, until my parents went out and bought another PlayStation 4 for him. When I moved out, they finally had to deal with how they raised my brother so spoiled because I wasn't there to help with him anymore. On his recent 14th birthday, he went absolutely crazy on my parents for not getting him a PlayStation 5. He's now grounded for I don't know how long, after causing hundreds or maybe thousands of dollars in damages during his rampage. He picked up a chair in our house and he just started destroying anything that was in front of him with it, and my parents just looked mentally checked out when I saw them last. My aunts also told me that they confided in her, that they wish they could have sent my brother to military or boarding school because they can't handle the monster they created anymore. But there is no way they can afford that. I'd be lying if I said I didn't find it ironically funny. Guys, it's actually sad to see that the parents are finally realizing what monster they've created over the years. And the aunt's probably just shaking her head at this point going, I told you so. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/ entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories today. I hope you didn't shake your heads too hard. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/ I don't work here lady, where Karens are running rampant and getting arrested over and over again. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.